and Jam Young just fucking takes the biggest dookie on us I've ever seen. Like, that was insane. We skipped like another like 4 best of 3s. So we just don't play like an official for 4 months. It kind of confuses me. I think like sometimes people are like a little bit over loyal.
The next topic that I actually want to touch on is Mongolia, because this was a big talking point at the time. Your first Asia RMR, because I think the previous one was like the one in Melbourne, which only had 4 teams. And you obviously are now playing over in Mongolia. I remember for me, it felt like this was quite a big event because like AUCS, it sort of feels like it's been on a bit of a downturn, and then, you know, we're back to 8 teams. We're back to being on land. We're actually in Asia rather than going over to, you know, fucking North America or Europe or somewhere to play the Asia event. So this sort of felt like a return to Asia minors. So I thought it was a pretty big deal. And you guys go over to Mongolia. Now, first interesting little tidbit about this event with regard to you guys was that the day we were going to leave, or the day prior to we were going to leave, Mac. So it was Mac, myself going from Australia as well. But we were not flying with you guys or anything like that because most of you guys were going from Melbourne or something. Regardless, Mac gets like all panicky and he like messages me and goes like, "Oh man, have you got like your COVID test?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What COVID test? Like, we don't need a COVID test. Like, don't need one because we're going to Mongolia or whatever." And what happened was, I think he was talking to someone from Vertex, whether it was your management or one of your players, and he'd heard about you guys getting into a bit of shit at the airport where you guys were flying via China or something like that on a Chinese airline.
We're flying through Beijing.
Yeah, and to go into China, you needed a negative test. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, no. Kind of. They wouldn't let... Christian is like... Right. Christian is like our warning for any like travel issues because he flies from New Zealand
Right.
like 2 hours before us, and when he flies to Australia. But like New Zealand wouldn't let him fly out, like leave New Zealand until he got a negative COVID test because it was going to fly through Beijing.
Right.
And I can't remember if I think they said the same to us at Melbourne Airport. So like it's happened a couple of times. Like was when we're trying to go to Mexico, like we didn't realize I mean, our travel is like pretty bad sometimes. We didn't realize we needed like I forget what it was called. It was like saying to go into America. It was like some sort of like short-term visa. But yeah, we need to get a negative COVID test. So everyone's rushing to go get like negative COVID tests. And then I think like Christian like just makes it on the plane or something. And then everyone in Melbourne, we were able to get COVID tests at the airport. But for some reason in Christchurch on the weekends, they just like, because it's like a smaller city in like New Zealand, they just don't have an open COVID test. Like there's not that many planes going out. It's like a waste of money for them to have it open. So yeah, we almost didn't make it there as 5. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. I think just like small thing on like when we got Hazard, I mean it kind of we lost like 2 events in a row. Not of like anyone's fault, but like we just lost 2 in a row, and then we got Hazard. We just like we called for like 3 events in a row, and we had like a lot of confidence from that. Also like Hazard was someone who's always just like dominated our team, like specifically him. Especially when we're bad, we kind of just thought like Hazard was a god. Like he'd just always peak, would always die, like he'd always multi-frag, like all his sites were like pretty strong with how he's playing him. Like for the most part. So yeah, when we got him, we're pretty confident going into the RMR.
Yep.
And then it didn't go great for us.
No, it didn't.
Bit of another Vertex international performance.
Oh,
but
dude, you guys have like some really cursed events. Like first it was obviously Dreamhack Melbourne, and then it's now the Asia RMR. And so to get into it, like I think there was a lot of issues with that RMR. We can talk about how it was a little bit scuffed. First of all, I think obviously you guys were uniquely affected by it because I recall there was a conversation around Ancient being like a bit of a pocket strategy. No one was really expecting you guys to pick that, but you pick it or allow it against Rare Atom. And then that game, you only play like 2 rounds that day. And then the whole day gets cancelled and you have to play it the next day. So like this element of surprise is gone.
Yeah. So yeah, we definitely didn't have like, we didn't really want to play Ancient.
Right.
We didn't, I think in the past, I always feel like we've gotten away with some pretty favorable vetoes and we've never been punished. this was the one where like, okay, we actually had to play Ancient.
Mm.
So for both us and Rare Adam specifically, it used to be our permaban, like for both teams. And I'm like, they're Rare Adam. They have to think they're like massive overdogs. They're not gonna play Ancient like in a series. And we picked up Ancient specifically to play against Greyhounds in a month before because I wanted to be able to ban Inferno against him and force Ancient sometimes because that was before the Ancient got like a little bit better. I feel like they're like pretty comfortable on Ancient now, but in the past it looked like there's no one to prac in Australia on Ancient, and they win like every Inferno game. Like, we should pick up Ancient. So we go into this video, and then it was even like the whole event was like horrible. Like this, I don't know if admins were doing it at any point. But like just like halfway through like the video, like they just have like a 2-minute text break where they can just like text their analyst who's
Right.
not in the video with us. But anyway, it goes to Ancient. I think we go up like 3-1 or something. Or like we like win the first gun round, we win the pistol,
Yeah.
and we're doing like a B rush on the second round. And at that point we felt like we were really on for the game because we could have finished that game pretty easy. And it definitely didn't feel like they had too much preparation on us. Um and the problem was in this game was our CT side wasn't that good because on that map, I was playing like an anchor spot, and then Jared and Christian were playing both for rotators. Like at that time. But it wasn't horrible, but it was like it just wasn't like optimal setup. And then on T side, we had like one bread and butter thing from Mouse. It was like our go-to. We call it like Mouse mid, and it's basically like a reactive mid take.
Right.
And Mouse had just been owning in Europe on it. They were like 8-1 on Mirage, and basically the idea is uh like you do like all the mid smokes from the start. I mean, you see whatever the CT's through. I mean, you have counters to like if they do the double mollies mid, if they do like the smoke, like the like little smoke on Ancient, which blocks off elbow. Like this is how we react to it. And there's all like someone just holding flash in the spawn is ready to just like throw flashes behind the people running out mid. And we can also dodge mid nades because we're not just rushing out mid. And this was like doing really well for us in practice, but it was the only thing we've done and we'd shown it in like against Greyhound, and it was like our go-to thing on Ancient because we're putting way more work into other maps because we didn't think we were going to be playing Ancient this event. So we come back the next day, and like they've obviously watched Ancient, like us play Ancient because like why wouldn't you? Like we're watching all their Ancient games,
Yeah.
they're watching all our Ancient games, and Jam Young just fucking takes the
Jam Young
biggest
just
dookie on us I've ever
fucks.
seen. Like that was insane. I think he had like some CZ rounds where it's just cross map, just like double dinking people.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that was like obviously like it sucks you can only play like the game in front of you. We tried to add some things for Ancient, but it was just like it wasn't a map because we started playing it at the start, and then it was a map we just changed into a perma because everyone started playing it. It was just a map we didn't have that much experience on.
Yep.
But I felt like yeah, maybe another cope. I definitely think the game would have been at least close. And we had so much momentum, like winning first pistol and winning the first 2 gun rounds off like a pace change second round. I feel like that's like
Oh, it was the dream start. It was like
yeah, it's a dream start.
if you could
Yeah.
have gone to I don't know what round it might have been like round 5 where the pause came in and whatever, but like I think you might have been up 3-1, whatever, something like that. But if you would have freeze framed at that moment, 3-1 up, you'd been like, this is the perfect start to an Asia RMR
Yeah.
for an ANZ team. And then pretty much from that point onward, it just starts to go downhill for Vertex. Like you had like 4 rounds of we're having fun at the Asia RMR, and then everything else was like super cursed events. So
Yeah.
one little extra aside that I wanted to ask you before we actually got into what happened with Malta and Kingfisher and stuff like that was were you ever like a little bit scared of getting sick at that event? Because like I could remember watching like in particular the Rare Adam players, they just looked like death walking, man. Like they had like these cold patches on their foreheads, they were wearing masks while they were playing, they just looked awful. And I was like, every time I got in an elevator with one of them, I was like, shit, I'm gonna just like like I'm not gonna breathe, whatever. But I was like, I'm so glad I am not a player, because I assume you have to sit at you obviously have to sit at that station where they've been sitting for however long. So were you ever a bit scared about like getting sick or anything like that? Does that ever something you guys think about when you're playing?
I think we saw they were sick, but we weren't thinking about it too much. The main Mongolia thing we were thinking about was like how like what was like how free we were to like do things. Because at the start we're like, yeah, like if you guys want to walk, like try take one of us with you.
Yeah.
If you want to go explore, and like don't go that way alone. Like you
Yeah.
can probably go that way alone, but like don't like bring one of us, but do not go that direction. It's like okay, they're mainly focused about that. But I think we only saw the rare dumb players once, but we just saw that sick, and we weren't thinking about it as in like like that's gonna affect us. Where like kind of sucks. Obviously, I hope it like we're not getting sick, but it's like that's good for us, like CS wise, like if other people are sick.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think I don't know. I was just like walking past them, like just before we're setting up. I was like, damn, that looks like pretty cursed. Yeah, how sick they were, but it was so overshadowed by how bad the event was being run.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
All right. Well,
yeah.
anyway, moving on from that. I mean, speaking of getting sick, right? Obviously, Malta then got sick from day 2 or day 3 onwards. You played basically 1v01 with him, and then for the rest of the thing, he was kind of out. But it was like food poisoning or something like that. It was like a stomach bug, it seemed like, for like a couple days. As a result of that, obviously, you have to play with Kingfisher, and you played against Twisted Minds, who ultimately did beat you guys and knock you out. So you essentially went out in quote-unquote last place. Now, circumstances were not obviously ideal, but just give me a bit of insight as to what it was like playing this best of 3. You know, you lose Malta, which I think at an event like that is a particularly big deal because he's someone who's like a veteran of those kinds of events in particular. But also you're playing with Kingfisher, who, you know, I guess he's probably not the worst person you could have as a sub, and he didn't play awfully from at least
he played well.
At least from my expectation.
It was so funny.
Yeah, but like, you know, what's that sort of do to the morale of a team when you're like, oh, this is our first Asia RMR, and then everything just goes wrong?
So like Liam's not someone who like if he wasn't really sick, he was gonna play, and like he was gonna play like being like almost dead, but like out of I think he was sick in the morning, but I skipped breakfast, because I was just doing like some more prep work, and then like everyone kind of said like, oh, Liam's pretty sick, and I'm like, oh, like hey, that sucks. Like he's probably got like a blocked nose or something. But Liam was like dying. And I think he was still like wanted to play when he knew it was like David or him. But eventually I was like no, like it's just stupid. Like he needs a doctor like now.
Yep.
And I think it even took him like probably too long to get a doctor. Like he asked for one, and the wait was like pretty long. And I think it was food poisoning, but I don't think we were ever like 100% sure. But like Liam was feeling pretty sick, and yeah, I definitely think Liam is someone who plays well for us in like I don't know how conscious it is, but I feel like when the game is important or like I think it's like specific maps. Like Liam tends to play like way better in his like base level. I think nobody's like bad normally, but I'm just thinking back to like a lot of the big like qualifying games or like games where like we're playing like Greyhound, like map 3 at Fortress, for example, like Liam just like drops 30 kills and it's like, all right, like we just win. So it's pretty rough, but we kind of just came in. I was like, guys, like, because our confidence going into this event, it wasn't the expectation, but I was like, we're trying to qual to a major, like that's like the goal. Of making like the roster change, like bringing in Jared. Like we felt like our like roles like were like pretty good. And then like the player quality was like insane. We thought we had like the best players like in Oz. But it's like if we can't beat Twisted Minds, who are like horrible with David, we're not gonna qualify for major anyway. So like who cares? Like we just need to like win this game and then like we'll like survive till the next day and hopefully Liam gets better. That's all we can control.
Yeah.
And then against Twisted Minds, I think yeah, David played like way better than he should have. But it was also just like on that team, the last season, so from the start of this year till before this player break, we were like incredibly like based on set rounds. Just because like we weren't as successful defaulting compared to other teams, and like everything was a set round almost. And yeah, like we really weren't winning like default, so like doing things on the fly was not our strong suit at all. So just dropping a player out of that was pretty rough for our T sides, and then also just adding on to that, I think some of our players, like for example me, like if I was sick and I couldn't play, I have like very limited notes, or like no one else could understand my notes if I couldn't explain it to them. And I think David just like straight up like just like didn't overuse it, and there was no time to learn it. It was like they didn't even want to let David like go get his mouse from a prac room. They were like, no, like the broadcast needs to start now. And it's like it was also like David like asked for DM, like 5 minutes like warm up, and we're like, no, like the game starts now.
Right.
It's like I would like to have like played a full ancient map the day before, but I guess we're like starting on time now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think we lose Anubis. I think it was our first official ever playing Anubis. We actually think we're pretty good on T side Anubis. I think like individually for me as well. I think it's one of my best maps on T side. I think like I don't know about like from like last season, I feel like I was like one of the best like Anubis, like I feel like it was one of my best maps on T side. And we end up like losing Anubis. Like David's never played it, and then we go into Overpass, which we were picking because like they had like no idea what they were doing on it. And it's just always a joke in our team, in our circle. It's like regional knowledge, the idea of regional knowledge.
Right.
And it's like Australian teams when we go overseas, like when we play Inferno, it's not as like jarring of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Because like Greyhound play Inferno, they're like Greyhound are a tier 1 Inferno team. It's kind of like playing in like another good European team.
Yep.
But when you play Overpass, Greyhound doesn't play it. No one practice like when I say no one practice map, like teams practice map, but no one is like has good theory
It's
on the map
different,
in
right? Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like we can scrim us. Like there's like when it was like we could scrim encore, and even we wouldn't scrim encore on it that much because they used to just troll in scrims and just try to work out how we played. Is how it felt. And then on map 3, it would always go to overpass between us and encore.
Yep.
So we couldn't even scrim it that much. But the joke was always our regional knowledge on overpass is like really bad. But we end up winning overpass against Twisted Minds because their overpass is so bad. It was also just like one of our favorite maps for a lot of players. Like I think Easy, Addict, me, and Hazard, we all really like overpass. So like having we did the video when we were playing with Liam, but I think it was pretty good just being able to slot David in for like Liam's role, and like David just needed to like stare at a monster smoke that game, and we won. And then I forget what map 3 was. Or maybe it was Inferno. And then like not having like Liam on Inferno, like me and Liam just like still like to that day we were just 2 men taking banana against like the best teams, and it was working like a lot. So like not having Liam there, and it was me and David playing the set, and I feel like yeah, we just kind of just like lost Inferno off that, and then we're out of
Feels like an
event.
exploitable B
GG.
site.
Yeah, it's an exploitable B fight for sure.
Yeah.
Like and that was it. Game over.
Boom.
But I think that was still like a disappointing. Obviously, the situation's fucked, but I think that was still a disappointing loss for us. We felt like we should have been able to pull that through a 4. But yeah,
It didn't feel like you guys
it's
really
what it
got
is.
to have a proper crack at the Asia RMR really. And what was extra sad about that as well was like I remember seeing Malta like the next day, and he was like totally fine. Like it was just like this is the worst possible circumstances you could have faced, and if you could have got through that series, like maybe Malta comes back the next day, and like you never know. Anyway, but we will never know until you guys qualify for another Asia RMR, which won't be until next year anyway. So. Moving on, we're sort of catching up almost to the modern day, and the last thing that I sort of want to talk about specifically is Dreamhack Melbourne again. So you run it back at Dreamhack Melbourne, and this one it feels like your run into Dreamhack Melbourne's a lot better, right? Even though things didn't go quite so great at the Asia RMR, you've had some pretty good prac, you've got this team together, you've got a good core 5. Things are going well for Vertex at this point in time, just in general. You go into Dreamhack Melbourne, you must be feeling a lot more confident than what you were going into the previous. And you played against BNE, you played against Rare Atom. It didn't really come together so much, but surely this was a better experience than the previous Dreamhack Melbourne was.
Yeah, this was definitely a better experience. I think again, sorry, the first day, when we were playing against, or maybe it was the same day. Yeah, sorry, we're out in one day this event. The first map we played against BNE on Vertigo. I think we just had like a rough start to CT, but like our T side was pretty good, and we're playing rounds pretty good. And then BNE are like, it's kind of weird because it's not like they're like a top like 10 team or something, but they can like they have really good results like against like good teams over time. But we can't be like too like sad about like losing to them. I mean, it was just a really rough CT. They did like they just got like really good momentum at the start, and I think it was one of those things where it was a bit of like first game playing on land for a bit, and they're just like running up ramp, and like like sometimes you hear saying cues, but like they're gonna stop, right? Like most people would stop, but like Beanie were not stopping. They were fucking like we heard them like running up a wooden ramp, and then I'm like rotating back in. And I'm like, oh, like yeah, like maybe like they're peeking like into like the default lines, but it's like not they're already on the right wall of sight. And I'm like, oh, okay, like my bad, I
I'm
guess.
doomed.
Like I didn't hear them. Yeah, we lose to Beanie. But we're still feeling like really confident in our roster, and I still think we are really confident in our roster right now. Um, but like, okay, like we can like definitely beat Rare Adam. Like I feel like again, like we like lost to Mongolia, but it's like we didn't really feel like that was a fair game, and we feel like individually, um, like we don't feel like they're like way better than us, and we feel like strategically we're like a lot stronger than what they were, just because of how Advent calls, and also Advent is just like so bad. Um, but like we kind of felt like there's like some callers. I don't really think of myself that way, but like on CT, it's just like
You
they're
run at
like
his
very
side.
abusable,
Yeah.
and I feel like Advent's playing like B Vertigo,
Mm-hmm.
like
And he's always
like
behind
he's
quad. Like he's always behind that pillar at the
yes
back of
every
sight.
two. It was
Yeah.
so funny. He's holding the flash directly into the fucking
Gee.
sky,
Yep. Yeah.
which like it goes so high up, it like only half blinds you, and
Yeah.
it's just like yep. Um, yeah. So we played that series. I think we won Vertigo, and it was good because Vertigo is a map for us where we feel like really good on the map, but we feel like against Greyhound specifically, we never get any map control. Um, or before the play break, we were never getting any map control without dying, and there was like a lot of deaths, even with like this like I think we have a really good roster now, but like Leah's were just like if he wanted to kill like Liam at B, like on their CT side, like he would kill Liam, and if they wanted if like Ali wanted to like get kills at A ramp, it feels like he could always get kills on A ramp. I think it's just like how we're using like util, and we just like weren't that good at like punishing like over peaks, to be honest. Or maybe not over peaks because they're always working, but like we weren't very good at like punishing like I don't know if dry swing's the right word because it has like negative connotation, but
Mm.
sometimes we'd use util and we'd just like chat it, they'd peek back and would like still wouldn't punish. But we always felt like our Vertigo was really good. So like we lose to B&E, it sucks, but we have a good T side. We play against Rare Atom, we have a really good T side on Vertigo. And then we go into Inferno. And on Inferno, in scrims, would been like experimenting with a different style before this event, and it just been like doing like really well on T side. We just like watched a bunch of like the Mongols. And we were just running a lot of like early like team rounds. Where they're doing like one motion A's, like a lot, or like they're doing like instant B pops. Um, and it was just working for us really well. And then we play against Rare Atom map 2. So if we win, we go through to the next day. I think we have like a decent CT. And then on T side, I think we just like first 2 gun rounds, so we like fucked up set rounds. We've been like running like all weekend scrims, and I was just like, fuck, like it's like if this was a scrim, I would be full tilted right now for sure. But like just like trying to keep it together. Like David, like oh sorry, Kingfisher like takes a pause, and it's like I reckon we just play some open-ended defaults for a bit, which basically has been like we're not remembering set rounds, just like try like causing the drum.
Yeah.
And then we ended up just like losing that game pretty close. I think it was a bad. I think the thing which is sucked about that game, I think it was like 13-13.
Yeah. It
And
was quite
then
close.
me and Addict had like the 1v2, where I think it was someone was coming up dig,
This was on
and
Inferno with Advent, right? Where he defused the bomb in the middle of the
yeah, I
crossfire.
forgot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like I was low, so I picked up AWP in like 4v5, but then I was in it with like in a 2v1, and then I missed my shot. Christian missed his shot, like his shots, and we just whiffed. But we
Yeah.
played it perfectly because he was trying to bait me into like really common. Like when you're like the guy like going up dig, like you're like shooting at sight and then you're looking at pit because you know
Yep.
the pit guy's gonna swing off dig guy's contact.
Yep.
And then like we weren't peeking, Christian wasn't peeking.
Hmm.
Um, but we just both like missed our shots. Like it doesn't matter how good we play it if we just like don't shoot.
Yeah, it was
Like
it literally like I
yeah,
because I remember I think either I was casting that or I was watching it. I'm pretty sure I was casting that series, and I saw it and I was like, this is like an unlosable club. Like this is an unlosable round. It's Advent. You're in a 2v1.
yeah.
You've
No,
got like
you
the
think you're
perfect
on.
pit site crossfire. Like there's no
Yeah,
time. I don't think he even had a defuse kit either. Like I think it was a full 10-second Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
Lose that round.
So we
Lose
lose that
again.
one. We lose Inferno, but we felt like our Inferno was better than their Inferno. And I think previously in the event, in the Mongolia RMR, what led to us playing Ancient was I didn't want to play them on Inferno because they had like a 10-0 record. They beat like Navi and like Liquid.
Mm.
And I was like, I don't think I'm better than Simple. I'm probably not better than NAF. Like why would we play Inferno against them? But I actually think, looking back on it, I think it's like probably something I won't do again.
Mm.
Is like you can't overvalue like the other team's videos. You need to consider our team. And I think out of I think our Inferno players we like work some things out to play a lot better. And just over pure years of just like playing against Greyhounds, I think our team internationally or like relative like is pretty good at Inferno. Um, especially like recently we've gotten like way better in how we approach the map.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I kind of wish we didn't beat Ancient in the first game, but I guess it's easy to say. And also fucked issues, so
Yeah.
whatever.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, we're pretty much caught up
Yeah.
with the modern day of Counter Strike. Like, there's obviously been like a season of ANZ champs and some qualifiers and stuff involved there as well, but nothing like super big deal to sort of talk about. But it does sort of tie into like I've got a couple of miscellaneous topics that I want to quiz you on here right at the end, and it does tie into the first one, which is the rivalry with Rooster. So obviously you've lost a couple of recent international qualifiers to them, but throughout just the context of the Rooster versus Vertex rivalry is like throughout 2022 and 2023, it sort of felt like, and even going back to maybe 21, you sort of had teams like Order and Direwolves, or like this Order/Direwolves, Avant, LFO, Encore, whatever roster you want to call it. Those were teams that were always sort of sitting above you and Rooster, with like Greyhound number one, and then it was like Order Avant or Order of Direwolves, whatever, while you guys were sort of coming up. But now it sort of feels like Vertex is very much in that 2/3 spot. So I kind of just want to get your thoughts on this Rooster rivalry, because it feels like you guys are now like the modern day equivalents of Order and Avant, where you're the number 2 and number 3. But there is like definitely a blurred line in between who's number 2 and who's number 3. So what do you think about this matchup, and where do you guys sort of sit at the moment, do you think?
Yeah. I think for like both of us, like if you ask their team, they would say like, oh, like we won like the last 2 Pro League spots, like we're the better team, like clearly, and they wouldn't even think it's a rivalry. I think we're like the same. We're like we lost 2 games, but we won like the last like 8 out of 10 best of 3s. Like we qualified for like we beat them in like event qualifiers, and we've beaten them for a long time. But I do think so like yeah, I think we both think the other team is bad. Oh, like not bad, but like we both think we're way better than the other team.
Right.
Which is how it should be as well. Like I mean, it's way harder to play if you're like Rooster are pretty good. Like
Yep.
it's more like these guys suck. Like we know how they play, and like I think we both have a pretty good read on how we play. And I do think I hate to say it, like I do think we are a pretty good team. They have like a style they play, and I think some of their players, I think individually their players are like really good. They make like pretty good decisions a lot of the time, and I think they play like broken rounds, like 3v3s and stuff, like really well. Um, but yeah, I think as well, I think Rooster has a style maybe compared to like I feel like the olds, like the Order and Direwolves, how they played was very different to how Rooster and mainly how Rooster play, but probably like both of us. I feel like we both play like very different compared to those 2 teams, and I do think Rooster has a better chance. Not that they're gonna like beat Greyhound or something or like overtake them, but I do think I think it's way more likely that Rooster would like win a qual against Greyhound than like Order back in the day losing to Greyhound. Just
Mm.
because like no matter how close, no matter how like close like I felt like Order got, I think they had like way more mental block against like Renegades and Greyhound
Yep.
compared to like our teams, where like again like it's not like we're like it's not like we're gonna beat them. Let's say it's not like we're gonna like overtake them and be like number 1, like win every event. Um, but I think the way we play like is like a little bit better against Greyhound compared to those old teams. And I think those old teams they had like certain players who were like they would just always choke for like in the 13-13, the 10-10. It always
Mm.
felt like
Mm.
because I remember watching games where it's like Order was up like 12-3, map 3 against
Yeah.
like Greyhound or
That was like an
Emeralds. Emeralds,
infamous
they'd
Inferno
always
game.
lose.
Yeah, or
Yeah,
11-4
it's like
or
I was
something
like,
like
I
that.
don't care. Like they won't lose.
You're up 12-3 on the second map, and you've won the first map, and then you just lose that best of 3. It's like, oh, okay. What can you do? Yeah, one thing I always liked about this Rooster roster is like they just don't seem to give a shit. Like it doesn't really matter who they're playing or what the context is. It's like they seem to like have this sort of like inner confidence that they seem to not have any sort of mental block or mental issues. Like they don't even fucking take tack pauses, you know. So whatever. I think that kind of just speaks to the mentality of that team. But I wanted to talk to you as well about the state of ANZCS as it stands at the moment, because I remember a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, just after Bris Vegas had finished, there was like a little bit of a discussion going on Twitter about how things are sort of at the moment, and you were sort of weighing in on what you thought might have been some of the issues or some of the circumstances within ANZCS. So, I mean, I guess just to set the stage, just in case someone's watching this back in like a couple of years or is from overseas or something like that, it's just basically at the moment in 2023, it feels like there's just it doesn't feel like it. There is far less like officials and games going on basically in ANZ compared to previous years. So, we don't have that necessarily that oversaturation that was there in like 2019 or 2020 or 2021. And it sort of even feels a little bit like maybe there's like a lack of competition outside of the top 3, right? You have obviously Greyhound, Vertex, and Rooster, who are all quite competitive, but I don't know if there's anyone beyond that who you could say like, oh, there may be an up and coming sort of exciting team. Maybe to an extent like Eliminators, but it doesn't really feel like they're even super competitive really with Rooster and Vertex, and certainly not with Greyhound. And this is where I wanted to quiz you, because you sort of weighed in on Twitter and said, I think there's a pool of players that can perform or understand the game well enough to compete against top AU teams, but teams below us and Rooster and Greyhound don't have 5 of those players in one roster. So what's your opinion on AUCS at the moment and where things are sitting? Like, do you actually think that there are legitimately enough players to kind of have more than, let's say, in this case, 3 competitive teams in AU, and the circumstances as well around how many games and officials there are at the moment? What's that sort of been like for you as a team to sort of deal with?
Yeah. I think I'll just go over like the general scene, and then I can talk about like the teams and like not having like how teams how like rosters are being formed right now. Yeah, I think there's definitely like a lack of like matches. And it's like really like it's pretty tough as a player. I think previously when it felt like oversaturated, if you're a caster and you're casting every game, like for sure, or if you're like a diehard viewer and you watch every game, like I get it. But when you're playing, like you're only playing like your team's games, and even though like we might play like a lot of like Vertex Greyhounds or a lot of like Vertex Roosters, we still wouldn't be playing like that often. Like we'd have like a tournament like every month or something, but we'd be playing officials like throughout the month. But now it just feels like every 2 months there's like a super important like qualifier, and then other than that it's like nothing to play. Like there's not even like an LPL. I feel like LPL dropping out was a massive thing. I also think MDL getting cut out, even though it's good for um like Greyhound, like not having to like be there, making like spend more time overseas. I think MDL was like a massive thing for like just in general, just getting game time for teams that weren't top 4. I don't think MDL really mattered for them, like for regular season games. But there's another playoffs to play, which is good for top 4 teams. But the 5th to 8th teams or the people coming up, I think MDL was like pretty massive. You got to play like everyone in an official once, and even though I think some of the better teams would just like troll and just like run at you. I think a lot of the teams would like play properly and then give you good practice, and that was how like players could come up, and how like teams like us came up was because of MDL, and was because we could play MDL, we could play ESL champs, and I also think oh sorry, and LPL as well. Like you could play like all these best of 3s. I think for a top team, I think you couldn't play all 3, but for the teams below that, because you're not making it to the like LAN events, or um you're not making it to the playoffs of like every event. It's not too much to play when there's 3 leagues going on. And I even think the structure of champs, how this is more just for us, but like we keep on coming. We came like top 2 of the first stage, and we just skip an entire like we skip like another like 4 best of 3s, So we just don't play like an official for 4 months.
Mm.
And then it's like, yeah, play like single Elim, best of 3, it's a single Elim, like best of 3 qual against like Greyhound, um, for like the spot. And they had a substitute, we lost. That was like a massive blunder as well.
Mm.
Um, but I think it's like really tough for teams to improve, like just relative to each other. Just because like if you're the best teams and you're like playing like you're like the only ones like who can actually play matches, like no one else, like none of the 5th to 8th teams, even if those teams exist, which I do think those teams exist, I think they're just like a little bit unstable because a lot of orgs have dropped out compared to last year.
Yep.
Um, they can't really like improve, and it's not clear who like the 5th best team is. And then for like us and Rooster, maybe not Greyhound too much, but we're playing like no officials. So when we go overseas, like it's like our like 10th best of 3 of the year, but we're playing against like these Euro teams where like they have like all the best players from their country, or they're like an international team where they can just take like 6 players from every roster, and then they're playing like all these like just like random online cups, like they're playing like 200 maps, compared to like we're playing on like our like 30th. Like I think it's like really hard for. I think it's possible with like boot camps and like I still possibly it's not an excuse for like why Australian teams aren't performing overseas, but I do think it would be way easier if we were playing more matches, and we didn't have to just like scrim against each other. And then because there's so few important matches, like so much stuff gets like saved, and people don't want to like counter each other in scrims. It's not even like you're like saving a specific execute. It's just like you won't get punished for things like say I remember like one player like he's had like a tendency of like smoking and like leaving like all the time. Um like they like it's like smoking like their side and they go like overstack like on Dusty for example, like smoke upper and you go like overstack towards like mid ramp.
Mhm.
But like in scrims, like you're just gonna see it and you're just gonna see like that player like on the kill feed in mid and you're like, he does that a fucking lot. I'm not gonna use that in this
Right.
in this scrim.
You're not going
Like
to
I'm never
let
gonna
him
use this
know
in the
that you
scrim.
know that he's doing
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
But like everyone knows it's like a tendency. And obviously like the best players like you should never be doing things like 100% of the time. And that's like what I think a lot of players don't do. I think a lot of players do things like a lot of AU players do things too consistently.
Mhm.
But like we're not getting punished until like the like rare match. Like the rare matches we play. Um yeah, I also think the thing is like the org support, like all the orgs dropping out. Probably a little bit because there is no matches as well, for
Mm.
sure. And there's like nothing to play for if it feels like there's like not as much to play for if you're not qualifying for overseas events. But I feel like for the 5th to 8th teams, which have always been like the way we find like new talent, um, it's like no way you get like those players can get better in matches. Um, rather than just like I don't know, like scrimmage is like it's just not the same. Yeah, yeah, that's what I have to
Mm.
say about it.
Well, the other topic was like obviously the dilution maybe of talent. I think was the other sort of
But
point
yeah.
there. Did you have any 2 cents on like how many like I don't want like you don't need to name names or anything like that, but like in terms of like if you could like in your ideal world like build braces mega teams, how many like actual competitive teams do you think there would be worth of players in ANZ right now?
I think you can have definitely 6 teams. Not not everyone's gonna be Greyhound, but
Sure.
I think everyone can win like maps off us like I think you can make 6 teams that could win maps. Maybe not all the time, but like they could like at least upset maps.
Mm-hmm.
Against like us and Rooster, like I think you can make 6 teams for sure.
Mm.
And it's the thing which confuses me is I think in 2022, I think there was a lot of org support, and I think the reason the talent was diluted was because of those orgs. So like you like when like everyone's getting paid, you can't cut people the same as when like everyone's playing for free.
Yep.
Um, and like you can't get players because other players will have buyouts. They'll be playing on orgs. But right now, there's like no. It feels like there's like not that many orgs. If I was a good player, or if I was like one of the best players, I don't understand why those people aren't pushing to play with the other good players and actually compete. Because like you can't. It's so hard to like, especially consistency, but you'll never like consistently like have a chance against us and Rooster if you just have like 4 good players or 3 good players. And I'm not even talking just get like 4 like mad fraggers. Like there's like
Mm-hmm.
players that just like do not like they're just like not good enough to like compete, which is like fine. Like they can be getting better. But if I was currently like if I was a good enough player to be like competitive against like us or Rooster, which like gets you competitive for like a pro league spot, that's like a massive thing. Like I wouldn't be playing like I would try conglomerate into one good team,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't even think it's one good team. I think you can make like 3 other good teams.
Okay.
But yeah, it kind of confuses me. I think like sometimes people are like a little bit over loyal,
Mm.
and are like willing to keep a roster for too long. But I think there's like players which are like really, really good, but I feel like far too often they just have like 2 like weak links on their team. So it just means like they're kind of like not wasting their time, but they're playing to like keep on performing and then get picked up by like one of us, or like how they would succeed is getting picked up by one of us in
Right.
Rooster
Yeah.
instead of all just being in one team and
Mm.
they can win.
Yeah. They need
But
to take a leaf out of the brace strat book, which is just like start cutting people left, right, and center. Just like don't give a fuck attitude.
just make one good team. Like I don't understand. Like, they can definitely be a 4th good team.
Right.
Like and I think there's been even times where it's just like 4 players are good and we just need to make one change.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't know. I also feel like it's kind of like lack of like I feel like there's not that many callers.
Yes,
Um
for sure.
and usually callers are like the leaders of a team and they'd be the one to make the decision. But I feel like if you just have like you're like smartest like rifle player, but he's not like the captain of a team, like he's not gonna make that change. Like
Yeah.
nearly as much as like if like it was like me or like Jared on the team, we'd probably be like we're trying to win, like this is a goal. Let's make this change.
It's for sure like a mindset thing. Like there are certain people who are like predisposed to being a leader or being a caller, and you can put someone in that role, but if they don't necessarily want that role, or they're not necessarily the right fit for that role, like they can do it, but it's never going to be the same, I don't think. And that's something that I've sort of seen over the course of however long, is that every time someone puts a player that's not necessarily an IGL in the IGL role, it's like the team never really seems to work. But actually that kind of ties into the next topic that I wanted to talk to you about, was that like in terms of like team composition, right? I feel like Vertex, and this is a conversation that I've had, especially with like Pili, for example. So I don't like think about the game in this way. I don't think about it as in depth maybe as you guys would. But like just roles wise and that kind of thing, the conversation has always been that Vertex and your teams have always had like a good balance of roles in terms of like aggressive players and passive players and players who like to play this role and that role and that role and that role and whatever, versus some other teams who have just in theory like looked like they picked up the best players across the board. So why do you think that is? Is that just sort of like your philosophy as a leader, as an IGL, to sort of try to balance these roles? And is that something that you think about a lot more than maybe you think other people do? Or
Yeah. I think I'm pretty specific with the players I think are good.
Mhm.
I don't think players can like just play one role. I don't think it's like a set role. It's like you have a support, like you have anchor. I think usually I try to pick up players that like the players that make the best decisions, to be honest. I know like mixing out with like how they're gonna fit into the team, how they come obviously like with firepower as well. But I do think it is important that like there's players that are gonna take responsibility for the whole team and kind of like lead like they're part of a map. And there's some players who aren't gonna do that. And I think if you have like I I've never had a problem with having too many people like taking like responsibility. Um, but I think it's really hard to play like in the past because we've had some rosters like this where just like it feels like I'm the only one calling and like putting pressure on the other team. Like it's like just like how I'm calling. It might not be me. I might be calling for like a ton of all picks or a ton of aggro map control. Um, but I think having enough players that like have like a good read on the game, um, and like will at least be able to like relay the information. But I do think you can like in like perfect world, like just having people play like their natural spots is really, really good. Um, but I don't think it's like a set thing, and I don't think other teams are necessarily doing it bad. I also think when all the orgs dropped out, we could just buy it. Like since we still have an org, we had like the purchasing power to get like a lot of the best players.
Mm.
I mean, it's really like when we took Hazard from on-call. Like, they're just fucked. Like, like, at that moment, like, you
Mm.
cannot replace that player, like, how good he was on that team.
Yep.
It's impossible. There's no, like, good change to make. But I think, mainly, like, I think why we have good role, or, like, why it looks like we have good roles, they kind of feel like the most important roles, it's just, like, how a team structure look is, like, the in-game leader and the AWPer. And I feel like me and Easy have been, like, the same the whole time. I think there's, like, more impactful, like, roles, like, in-game and, like, performance, but I think, how the AWPer's, like, moving around, like, how much, like, they're supporting rifles, how much, like, they're doing their own thing. Um, and then, like, how, like, I'm calling, like, the pace I'm calling, like, what I'm calling makes our roles look better than they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then on CT, I think we're a lot more, um, on some maps, we have a lot more structure on CT than, like, it might look. And it makes everyone look really, like, strong on CT. Like, we give, way more leeway to, like Malta, for example, 'cause, like, Liam knows what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, he wants to be able to, like, react, to how the other team's playing. But, sometimes, um, I feel like other teams, like, they won't have, like, a structure, so all of their players just look like they're just, like, all rushing, so, like, they look bad. But I actually think it's, like, this, like, they're not having anyone, like, calling for a team.
Right.
Yeah, just for, like, the lower tier teams. Yeah.
Who's one player that you would have liked to have played on a team with that you've never played with?
I've never played with?
Mhm.
Ooh,
Or not like never played with necessarily, but like someone that you've not actually had on one of your quote unquote proper teams that you would have liked to have played with in your career.
think it's so tough. I don't wanna say Greyhound players, 'cause I feel like Greyhound players, like, boring answer,
They're kind of the obvious choice,
you
aren't
know?
they?
Like, it's like, yeah, like, it'd be sick to play with, like, I don't know, like, Inns or, like, Leas, like, for sure.
Mhm.
I think, I always like, since, like, Leas has been back, 'cause I never actually played against, like, Leas when he was here, but I always thought Leas was, like, really, really good.
Mhm.
I actually feel like, yeah, just screaming off him, I don't know. I Yeah, I feel like I actually, like, learned playing against him a fair bit.
Okay.
He's, like, booked us in a couple games. But, like, I'll try to think for a non-boring answer, 'cause I feel like Greyhound's, like, pretty boring. Um, I think I'm gonna go I've always been interested to see what, like, maybe, like, I know, like, he's a caller, but like, I think he doesn't have the best reputation in the scene. Uh, but I've always been interested to see what, like, playing with Liquid would be like. Um, because I feel like, I really respect what they, uh, did when they were basically just, like, copying Gambit from what I can tell, unlike most maps. But, like, the style they were playing and, like, how good, like, Liquid was at taking map control in that, like, I think it was, like, 2021, he just had, like, a really good 3 months, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Damn, that's, like, pretty impressive, like, how fast, like, he's improved."
Mhm.
Um, and, like, I don't know, he was just, like, really, really good, like, suddenly. But I also think, just in terms of, like, old teams, as well, I think, I really wish I got to play with, like, Valiance, for longer.
Yep.
Just 'cause I feel like I only got to play with him for, like, 2 weeks. And, like, it kinda same with, like, Vexite. I feel like that was, like, the roster, like, I would've wanted to, like, play
That's like the one
longer with.
point in your career with where if you could like change something, that would be the moment where it's like instead of them leaving, you change it so that they stay. Is that like that's what
Yeah.
you sort of do?
Yeah. I kinda think so. Um, but, like, but yeah, I think it was inevitable. It was like us getting to like this version of a roster, I think was pretty inevitable. Like we knew when we picked up Vexite, he was always gonna get poached by Greyhound eventually.
Right. Right.
We
Yeah.
just thought we'd have more time than we did. We thought we'd have like 3 months, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
We had like, I don't know, like one tournament. I
Yep.
was like, okay.
It wasn't even really like
Um,
it was a qualifier. That was the sad part. Like it wasn't even a whole
yeah.
tournament.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
kind of think as well, I've got to play with a lot of players that I've always wanted to play with. Like I always wanted to play with Hazard.
Mm.
Um, like the entire time. I've like even from when I like started playing, because I remember he played with one of my like friends like really early on, and he was like, "Yeah, Haz is like really good." I'm like, "Damn, like that'd be cool to play with him one day."
Mhm.
Obviously like APOC dud was someone when we're starting out, I would like message him and like just like ask for like how are you like setting up your team, like how do you guys do this, and he would like always help me. Um, and it was same thing for like Liam, like I'd message sometimes. I'd just be like how does this work in like your team? And like he would tell me. So I feel like I got to play with him. I guess like if I was gonna play with anyone, probably yeah. I think it'd be really cool to yeah, I guess it's a boring answer, but to play with like Ins. Because I feel like Ins is like a really smart player. I feel like
Hard to go
like
past Ints, right?
yeah. I think it's like he's like yeah, I just think it's really good. He makes like really good decisions like all the time.
Mhm.
Um and I think like he would be like the player like where I feel like anyone who plays with him, I feel like they get like a lot better when they play with him by the sound of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird. I guess it's a weird question to ask you because, like, in theory, like you are making all of the roster decisions. So, if there's any
Yeah.
player that you wanted to play with, there's probably a chance you've tried to pick them up. So anyway, but the last thing I wanted to talk to you about was CS2. So, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think it's going to cause a bit of a shake-up? Have you? I mean, I assume you have it because you've played at the RMRs, but have you really played a lot of it? Do you have anything you want to say about CS2 and what you think it might bring in the future?
Yeah. I listened to like a little like podcast,
Mm-hmm.
not like just like mainly like CS players, like pro players and stuff. I feel like everyone's getting like the CS2 questions. I think no one, especially in Australia, even more than Europe, but like I feel like no team is like currently like playing it like a lot and like preparing for it. Just because like the game hasn't come out and in Australia, yeah, like you can't even
You
play
can't.
matchmaking.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think it'd be fun to honestly, because there's enough people have the game. We just need to coordinate it, like tell everyone to go at the same time. Um, but I think for the AU scene, I think ooh, I I think I'm optimistic that it'll bring a lot of like players back, and then I think a lot of like short term like orgs will come back.
Mm-hmm.
Is how it feels like kind of like when Valorant like was like the thing, like everyone like just jumped back in, and I think
Yep.
it's a little bit different because like I'm pretty sure the orgs were more excited because of like the riots like system or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like how they support the orgs, but I still think a lot of the players will come back and there'll be a lot more eyeballs on CS. Too. I don't think it's gonna shake up who the good players are like too much, but I think in like 6 months, I definitely think there'll be like a new player where like no one knew he was that good, and like they'll be really strong in the game, and I think it's gonna be like pretty interesting to see how teams adapt to the changes. I think the smoke change is like pretty massive on like some maps, and it'll be like really different how some maps play. I also think they're probably gonna change the map pool.
Mm.
Um, just like I think a lot of people like no one knows 100%, but I think like Vertigo going out makes sense because of how much Vertigo was just like a massive like how good can your players use one way smokes at A ramp, and that's like like a pretty big determinant on who wins the map.
Mhm.
So I think Vertigo going out will change, but yeah, I think it's gonna be really good. Like just in terms of like just like accessibility as well. I feel like you don't notice it because like I just look at like the map like fucking like 10 hours a day for like this long. But like if you actually like look at how like some of the maps look, like you look at the floor, they look fucking horrible compared to CS2. Everything like looks so cool. I think hopefully just like bring in new players, and I also think like bring in like casual players is kind of what CS2 could give us, because I feel like a lot of like CS:GO players have been playing for like CS for ages.
Yep.
But I feel like if I was like a 14-year-old kid and I just got like my first like laptop or like my first like computer, like I'm downloading Valorant instead of CS for sure right now.
Mhm.
Like it looks like way more fun. But I think just like everything like even like looking nicer and then just like having an update, I think it'll bring like new players in. And I think that's like pretty exciting.
Yeah.
He will be good.
Positive signs for the
Yeah.
future. Well, that pretty much
Yeah.
wraps us up. So, is there anything you want to say before we go?
Um no, not really. Just like mainly like a shout out to like our org owner. Like Jamie. He's been like supporting like the Vertex team since I don't even know how long it's been. I think it's been over 2 years, and like it's pretty like life changing thing like that support. Like it's like a lot of us like we didn't need a part-time job when we were doing uni, or like even like it can be like our main thing, like we're focusing on now. Like we're playing full time, and like we've been being able to like travel the world, because like we've been like largely due to him, like we can get like a lot of players like due to him being able to like see like Mongolia, see like Mexico, like see all over Europe. And for like some of my teammates, like we've like never been overseas before. Like it was like their first time like ever going overseas when we go to Europe. So I think it was like a pretty like uh pretty awesome thing like he's been able to provide for our team. And yeah, I think that's basically it.